Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Diabetes on a Budget. And we are talking about how to manage diabetes even with difficult financial conditions. And I'm going to resume my talk about nutrition in this video. So if you haven't watched the last video, please go back and watch it now, because we talked about what are the main food groups that are the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, when it comes to diabetes, have the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talked about the good being fiber, the bad being starches, and the ugly being sugars. And this time I'm going to talk a little bit more about sugars and how they affect the body and how to avoid having a problem with high glucose, high sugar with the sugars. One of the main issues in communication that I see happen constantly between healthcare professionals and between patients with diabetes and their families and the general public is to try and discourage them from having any and all carbohydrates, as if all of the carbohydrates were created equal. So they would say things like, do not eat anything white, do not eat any carbohydrates, go low on carbohydrates, go on a diet that has very low carbs or no carbs at all. And one of the things that, obviously this is done in good faith and to try and help the person not have a problem with the blood sugar. But the issue here, and that's the problem with this miscommunication, is that it gets the message across to patient, the incorrect message, that all of these things are created equal, that all forms of carbohydrates are created equal, that, you know, something like potatoes are as bad as something like a regular soda. That's not the case. And I want to explain how the sugars in particular are the absolute worst when it comes to diabetes, and especially the artificial sugars. So one of the things that I always make sure to tell my patients, and I want them to know this important fact, is what is the worst thing for a patient with diabetes to have to eat or drink. And a lot of times, the patients are not sure of what that is, or if there is such a thing that is worse than others. And the answer is yes, there is one thing that is worse than all the others when it comes to diabetes and the blood sugar, which is artificial sugars, especially coming in the form of a drink. The absolute worst thing for diabetes is sugar in a drink, especially regular sodas, sweet tea, and juice. And if I had to choose one of this category that I would say it's the absolute worst for diabetes, it would be regular sodas. Now, why is that? There are several things that make regular sodas and sugar in a drink, in general, particularly bad. One is the sugar amount, the sugar content of those drinks, because you can get so much sugar from food, but when the sugar is in a drink form, it becomes much easier to consume large amounts without realizing how much is really going into your body. So for instance, a can of soda has 13 cubes of sugar. Now that is sugar that is simply going to get quickly into the bloodstream and cause a lot of trouble for people who have diabetes. There is something called glycemic index, and you might not be familiar with the term, but as I explained, I think it will become much easier to understand. Glycemic index is the quickness of whatever you are putting in your mouth, how quickly does the sugar or glucose in it hit your bloodstream, the quickness of the glucose hitting the bloodstream from whatever you eat or drink. Now, it goes without saying, and it's common sense, that if you consume your food in the form of a drink that doesn't have anything to hold it back in the stomach or the gastrointestinal tract, then it goes directly into your bloodstream. So it has a very high glycemic index. It hits the bloodstream very quickly. And that is very challenging for the ability of your body to cope with it. It becomes very difficult for your own system, if you have diabetes, to deal with this, because your pancreas doesn't respond the right way and is not going to produce enough insulin to deal with that high volume of sugar coming in very quickly. But even with medications, many medications or most medications and even insulin are unable to cope with that. That is why, regardless of what you take, regardless of what medications you get, if you have diabetes, regular sugar, artificial sugar coming in a drink form into your body very quickly is going to be a very big challenge to your system. It's going to make your sugar run and spike up very high shortly after you consume such a drink. Now, why do I say that regular soda particularly is the worst? Well, it has, in addition to the high amount of sugar, and perhaps related to the high amount of sugar, is the ability of the regular soda for you to drink it without really realizing or perceiving how much sugar it has. If that sugar came in different forms, you probably would feel nauseous drinking it. But because it is coming in the form of a carbonated beverage, it conceals the amount of sugar that is present, so they can increase the amount of sugar, the number of sugar in the drink, without really raising any red flags or alarms for your system as you consume this. The carbonation also does something else to the body, and that is, it creates the impression for your body that you have digested the food. Now, I'm saying it creates the impression because it's not a real effect of it to make you digest the food. The carbonation makes the stomach acidity go higher. So it makes your stomach more acid. It makes you release more acid in your stomach. And even though acid is good, but it's, as many other things, it is good to an extent. So when it exceeds that extent and you have too much acid in your stomach, what that does is that it makes you hungry and makes you want to put more food in your stomach in order to satisfy your hunger. And so one of the main reasons why a lot of people complain that, I can't get full, I'm always hungry, seems like, is because they have an inflammation of their stomach, what we call gastritis, that is present as a result of drinking carbonated beverages. Those carbonated beverages make you feel hungry, even though they make you, at the time that you drink it, you may burp or you may feel that you digested the food. Well, that's not true. It's just made your acidity higher, but it definitely did not help you digest fat or digest protein or digest any other food elements. But it just created the impression that you're able to digest and that you're able to eat. Now, later on, you will crave more of the carbohydrates, and it will make you want more of more food to put in your stomach, and that is one of the biggest problems with carbonation. But obviously, the problem with regular sodas, as we saw, is mainly, number one, the sugar, and number two, the carbonation that's present in it. Okay, now when it comes to drinks that are like juice or sweet tea, those have a very high concentration of sugar in them. So even though they don't have the carbonation, but still they are bad for you because there is such a high amount of sugar that is present in the form of a liquid. So same things as we just said, that it hits your bloodstream so fast, it has a high glycemic index, makes your body try to respond by secreting insulin in a big amount. But with diabetes, that's not possible to produce such a high amount of insulin to keep up with that volume or that amount of sugar coming into your body. And as a result, the blood sugar will spike very high after drinking juice or sweet tea. In fact, that is why a lot of times it is recommended, or it's a part of the classic teaching, if you will, of treating a low blood sugar is to treat it with juice, because the juice brings up the blood sugar very fast. That's why they ask for people who get low blood sugar to treat it with juice. I prefer a different approach. We might talk about this in another episode, but for now, I just want you to know that consuming juices, regular sodas, and sweet tea are absolutely the worst thing for a patient with diabetes. And of the three, I would say number one, the absolute worst thing is regular soda. Okay, so you will ask, okay, well, what can I drink? What wouldn't make my sugar spike so high and increase my glucose levels so high? Well, there are multiple options, but I'm going to describe them in terms of badness, in terms of what's the worst now, and then the less bad, and then the less bad, ending up with the good, with something that you would drink without affecting your blood sugar at all, and it's actually healthy for you. So the absolute worst is, as we agreed, sugar in a drink, especially regular soda. The second in that list of worstness or badness, if you will, is the diet soda. Or number three would be flavored water. And then after that comes carbonated beverages that are not flavored. And then finally, the best thing or the least bad thing would be water, unsweet tea, and coffee. Now let's talk about each one of those elements and explain them, unpack them a bit more. So I mentioned that diet sodas are less bad than regular sodas when it comes to diabetes, but they are still not good. Why is that? Well, so as I previously explained to you, the regular sodas are bad because of the high amount of sugar that's present in them. That applies to regular soda, sweet tea, and juice. Now, the diet sodas don't have sugar. They have a sweetener, an artificial sweetener. So that artificial sweetener doesn't cause your blood sugar to spike immediately after consuming the drink, like a regular sugar or a regular drink would do. So if you drink a Diet Coke, for example, well, that's not going to make your sugar level spike afterwards. So that is good for a person with diabetes. A person with diabetes, which one is better for them? To drink a regular Coke or a Diet Coke? Well, the answer is Diet Coke. Because if they drink regular Coke, they are putting in 13 cubes of sugar in their body with each can, and that is just a tremendous amount of glucose, a tremendous amount of sugar that is not healthy at all for their blood glucose. But if they have a Diet Coke, then their blood sugar will not spike in a similar manner. Now, that doesn't mean that Diet Coke is healthy. So what's the problem with Diet Coke? Well, two things. Number one, which we mentioned last time, and the lesser of the two problems, is the carbonation in itself, which can cause a lot of issues, especially increasing the hunger factor, making you want to eat more. But also, by the way, which is something I haven't mentioned before, but like to comment on about carbonation, is that also because carbonation increases the amount of acid in your stomach and causes some gastritis, it can really hurt the gastrointestinal tract, can really hurt your stomach, especially if you are combining a carbonated beverage with a medication, sometimes over-the-counter medication like ibuprofen or naproxen or some of those medications. Because what happens, those medications, what they do, to simplify, they thin out the lining of your stomach, the protective lining of your stomach. Our bodies are designed, because we have this organ called the stomach that has acid to help us with digesting food. Our bodies are equipped and designed to have a protective layer on the inside of the stomach that prevents that high acid from punching a hole, if you will, in the wall of the stomach. But what happens if you take a medication that is designed to help pain, but also thins out that protective layer? That medication, like an example is ibuprofen or naproxen or Aleve, those medications will thin out that protective layer of the stomach, or if for whatever reason you're taking steroids, prednisone, or anything of that nature, that does the same, thins out the protective layer of the stomach. So if you drink with that a carbonated beverage that increases the acid, think of it as you're pouring acid on a thinned out layer of protection, you're going to have problems with the stomach. It can create small ulcers, inflammation of the wall, or even like a perforation, like an ulcer in the stomach that is going to be a real trouble, a real problem for you. So the carbonation in the diet sodas is a problem, and as we discussed. But the other thing that is the problem, and probably the bigger problem with the diet sodas, and the reason that they are not a good option and not a healthy option, is the sweetener itself. So the sweetener, whether it comes in the form of aspartame or saccharin or things of that nature, they have a lot of trouble. They have a lot of problems for your body. Now, what are those problems? Well, one of those problems, as it pertains to diabetes, is that it makes you hungrier. Whenever you have a drink that has any sweetener, it will, by nature, make you hungrier later on in the day. So you may think that you are tricking your body. Your body wants sugar, and you're giving it this form of sweetener that is not real sugar. So you kind of tricked your body, but the body isn't tricked. There is a reason why those sweeteners taste so sweet. They have a very high sweetness factor. They are, 200 to 500 times as sweet as sugar on your taste buds and on your brain perceiving it as sugar. Now, the problem is that when your body perceives that you're putting in this high amount of sugar, if you will, in your system, your body will need to respond. Now, you're challenging your system with this sweetener, this artificial sweetener that the body perceives as a very high amount of sugar. So it has to do something about it. So it will start to over-manufacture, over-secrete insulin in order to deal with that. Insulin makes you gain weight, makes you hungry, makes you want to eat more. So that is across the board, whether somebody has diabetes or doesn't have diabetes. But the idea is that the artificial sweeteners in general will cause you to want to eat more, and will make you crave carbohydrates, as well as by themselves having directly harmful effect on the body. Now, what are these harmful effects? They vary by sweetener. So older sweeteners, for example, like the saccharin and the aspartame, will have more issues and more problems on your body than newer ones and kind of semi-natural ones, like, for example, stevia, which is, I would consider it to be the best of the artificial sweeteners, the best of this group. So what happens is the artificial sweeteners are suspect of having a lot of problems, causing a lot of health conditions, including nerve conditions, neurological issues, including the effect, the possibility that they raise the chances of you getting cancer, especially with the older artificial sweeteners and so forth. Now, a lot of this is controversial. It hasn't been 100% proven, but what I would say is, why take the chance? And we know for a fact, even if this part of it, causing diseases and so forth, is controversial, what is not controversial is that they have a very high sweetness factor, and that they will cause you to be more hungry later on in the day. So what am I saying? Am I saying that if you're drinking regular soda, just stop? and don't drink any diet sodas and just drink water. I'm not saying that. And I'll tell you why. Because it's very hard for the person just to go cold turkey. And a lot of times it's not even advisable to just tell a person something that is going to be so difficult for them to do that they're just not going to be able to do it. So if somebody's drinking 6 or 7 regular sodas per day, whether it be Mountain Dew or Coke or Pepsi, it's extremely difficult to tell that person to just go cold turkey and just drink water, because these things, they don't just have sugar, they also have sugar, they have the carbonation, they have the addiction factor that makes the person want to come back for more, and they also have the caffeine. And if you just stop all the caffeine that is present in those Mountain Dews or regular sodas cold turkey, you will feel really bad. You will have a lot of headaches. You will have a lot of difficulty focusing, concentrating, feel tired, a lot of things. Now, there is a way to obviously get off the regular sodas, but what I'm trying to say is you can do that in steps. You don't have to do it cold turkey. And if you are a healthcare professional, be mindful of that. And you don't want to advise your patient to just go cold turkey. It's much better and easier and feasible and practical to walk them through changing from regular soda. Let's say, for example, if they are okay with the taste of diet sodas, they can switch to diet sodas. Yes, it's true that diet sodas have all of these issues with the sweeteners, but at least they don't have 13 cubes of sugar per can that will make the glucose be completely out of control. Now, a lot of patients will even from themselves say, I really don't like the taste of diet sodas. If I have to quit regular sodas, then I would might as well just drink coffee or water instead, which is fine. But I want you to understand that you can, as a healthcare professional, help patients gradually get off this big problem of the regular sodas. Now, the other thing is that if you are a patient, then also you need to remember that you don't have to do everything all at once. And as a matter of fact, with life hitting you from all directions, it's not even advisable to try and do too many changes with life going on, the children, the kids, having, the finances, the budget, work, all of that happening at the same time. So it's always better when you do one change, but one important change, and where you start is the regular soda, as I said. So I mentioned that regular sodas, sweet tea and juice are the absolute worst. Then comes the diet sodas. What's next? Well, what's next is either flavored water. You can get water that has a flavor, for example, the taste of blueberries or taste of whatever, and those things come obviously with the problem. The problem with those things is that it has sweetener in it. It doesn't have the carbonation, but it has the artificial sweetener. Or the better option, if you're going to switch and you like the carbonation, is to get the carbonated beverages, carbonated water that doesn't have those additives and those chemicals and doesn't have the artificial sweetener, but it at least gives you that carbonation that makes water a bit more interesting, less boring, if you will. Just have to remember that it can increase your stomach acidity and make you want to eat more. And you have to be careful to avoid things like aspirin and naproxen and ibuprofen and steroids with those drinks, because they can hurt your stomach. The best option clearly is just plain water, unsweet tea, whether hot tea or cold iced tea, and coffee. So a lot of questions have been raised about the potential harm of coffee to the body or of tea, but that's actually never proven to be the case. In fact, there are a lot of discussions now about potential benefit of caffeine and coffee to the body, especially in patients with diabetes. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go out and drink a lot of coffee, but I'm just telling you that there is hope. Not everything is equally bad, and it's a very good thing for your body if you need the caffeine to function, and it is a good thing for you to switch from something like regular Coke to coffee or to unsweet tea. Now, if you want the unsweet tea to have some flavor and not be extremely bland, there are several ways that you could do that. One of them is, if you want to add an artificial sweetener, the best one of them is stevia, which is the green packet. And try to avoid the pink packets, that's the Sweet and Low, or the Equal, that's the blue one. Even the Splenda, which is yellow, that's it's supposed to be better than the either the pink or the blue. It's better than Equal or Sweet and Low, but it still has its own problems, especially with being too sweet and having a high sweetness factor that keeps you hooked onto eating more carbohydrates and wanting to eat more carbohydrates. So that is the drinks in a nutshell. I will finish this episode by saying that it makes a tremendous difference. There are so many patients that I ask them, do just one thing, which is to stop drinking regular soda. Switch from regular soda to something, diet soda, carbonated water, something. Obviously, switch to unsweet tea and coffee and just plain old water if you can, but do something about those regular sodas because they are hurting you like you wouldn't believe. And I can't tell you how many times I've focused on this, and we were able to take patients off insulin. We were able to take patients off medications. If their blood sugar came down, hundreds of points, I can't tell you how big of a difference it makes. So if there is one thing nutritionally that I want you to focus on as a healthcare professional or as a patient, remember this: there is nothing worse than a regular drink, a sugar in a drink, especially regular sodas. I hope this episode has been helpful. And if it was, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and see you in the next episode.